At 9,000 feet, the light is brittle. Heat hammered flat over the western desert, and the first 20-millimeter strikes carved daylight through the port wing root, silent, a white slash that spits vapor and confetti of aluminum. The altimeter unwinds with the falling bits. Fuel pressure wavers. Needles flick in tiny treacheries. The cockpit becomes an oven full of petrol fume. Flight Lieutenant Arthur Hawk Merrick leans into the yoke, feels structure where a rib should be give like wet wood. Climb and it will crack, any spark and it will torch. He noses her shallow, counts heartbeats to the next hit, because past a certain rhythm, a wounded machine won't forgive. Gas stings his tongue before he realizes he's near gray out, oxygen off below 10,000 by rule, heat thickening thought. Beside him, Sergeant Bill Anders watches the port tank's needle droop and the compass card tremble and runs the math. At this rate, and with that wind, they'll drift beyond friendly air. The desert below is hardpan, scabbed and iron tough. It eats men who guess. In the radio bay, Sergeant Lena Dawes rips the canvas off the key and slaps Mayday. The long wire aft should be a singing line. The burst that chewed their trailing edge killed its insulator. Her carrier dies in the set with a dry cough. Hold a steady tone 10 seconds and the forward strip can draw a bearing. The rule scratches at her skull. She might keep 3, maybe 4, before the broken wire charges like a snake and arcs to the fuselage. One spark in this fume is a verdict, and her hand hovers. Corporal Jinx Macready, fingers glossy with fuel and grit, watches the starboard manifold sag. In heat like this, a cough means vapor lock creeping into lines, pressure shifting the boiling point of their only luck. The port side is a wound, half aileron gone, the fuel line peeing a fog into the wing root. The starboard is the last honest thing. He eyes the crossfeed lever, once painted to warn the unwary, and knows one wrong move could feed vapor to both engines and turn an air decision into a ground one. The port gunnery station is ragged cloth and daylight where control surfaces used to be. Merrick knots the yoke against a new weight in his left wrist, adverse yaw with teeth, and feels the crosswind working. 12, maybe 16 knots from the right. He learned wind in the double flutter of smoke and the edge of his own slipstream. Today, the smoke is miles behind, and they're alone with air they can't see. Crosswind landing with half an aileron is a game men lose by inches and stop with a cartwheel. Anders leans forward, mapboard slapping his thigh as the aircraft twitches. "Bail out," he shouts, reflex, not advice, when the desert rises too fast and the left wing threatens to fold. He reaches for the escape hatch lever, red paint chipped to bright scars. At Lossiemouth, they taught him the litany. Stable air, 1,000 feet minimum for a sure canopy, more to walk away with ankles intact. On this hardpan, gusts will grab silk and drag a man past the horizon. Merrick's glove floats over the handle like on a small animal ready to bolt. Red paint flakes onto his palm like a blood omen, and his business is to refuse blood until necessary. He knows the lullaby, escape protocol, and the dirge, emergency landing. Magnetos off at contact, props full fine, harness tight, gear up. Open a hatch into fume, and you feed a blast furnace. Cloth and bodies will stand in a spark. The wing root is misting fuel and hunting flame. He takes his hand away. Leadership is sometimes not moving. Dawes pries a pencil from behind her ear and wedges it under the key, a crude clamp to hold the carrier without arcing skin to plate. She strips the enamel from a length of field wire with her teeth, knots it to the snapped long wire stub at the insulator. No manual would bless the knot. It buys inches. She spits, crimps, swears like a fitter, and holds a single tone into the desert. 3 seconds, 4, 5, the set winds. Dust fills her ears, and the only thing audible is her pulse. Silence here isn't empty. It multiplies risk. A hot gust tastes the cockpit as the canopy vent cracks. Anders' pencil lifts from the map, like the desert is breathing. A drift line he drew in boredom becomes a sentence. East of El Alamein, a forward strip is a scraped lane with oil drums for punctuation. Miss it by a mile, and there's no second draft. Crossfeed is a coin flip. The starboard will sip until it coughs. Jump now, and 20 knots of ground wind will pick you up and drag you over hammered ground until bones complain. A rib taken by earth is as final as a wing taken by cannon. MacCready rests fingers on the crossfeed. The lever is stiff, valve sticky with grit and heat. Half open is a cruel indecision that can starve both engines or drown one. He remembers instructors who spoke and survived accidents and deliberate burns. He knows the smell, the high whine behind the teeth that means vapor where fuel should be. He waits for sign, the engine's note falling, or a tremor through the quadrant, because sometimes keeping a man alive means letting the machine speak first. Fuel drools from the port wing, atomizes in slipstream, glazes skin in a sheen that makes any spark a sin. Merrick's hands move like tools, slow and sure. The laminated checklists pinned under perspex never mention heat like a fist. He calls it, oxygen stays off, cool air is a joke here. Better a clear head in fume than false dose of cold. Electric switches are venom, touch only when not touching is worse. Static hunts weakness. Behind the panel, the compass card trembles like an eye. Sand haze smears the horizon. Slant visibility is under 2 miles in a sky that lies high and clean. That lie will kill you if you flare late. Anders draws a pencil line from now to there, with the ghost ribs of a river and a row of bleached truck hulks as the only witnesses. Find bone and his sums will hold. The set breathes a tone that's not theirs. Dawes kills the carrier, brings it back in gutted pulses, like a dying flare, hoping a DF station is awake. Pre-briefed frequency, men with headphones and habit. 10 seconds, and they'll draw a line on a board, speak wind to a cockpit. The long wire hums against her palm. Touch nothing. She wedges the pencil again, waits for the desert to answer with direction. The port aileron is an idea. The bomber limps. Merrick banks right, dead side up, live engine down, letting torque be an ally. He feeds nose and foot to the crosswind he can feel with an aileron he cannot trust. A belly landing will be a dance, the rudder leading, trim whispering, and enthusiasm in the yoke will ground loop them into memory. He says it flat. Gear stays up, wheels are shovels here. The belly will take it. Bail out now, Anders presses, seeing silk bloom and bodies follow gravity. 1,000 feet in stable air, lesson 1, but stable lives nowhere in this glare. Gusts drag, twist ankles, break spines on fist-sized stones. Parachutes love textbooks, wind loves trouble. He looks at Merrick and sees a set jaw like a hatch. Merrick snaps the harness 1 notch tighter, ribs creaking. There's a margin note in his pilot's notes. Aircraft commander override. That he never meant to test. He drops his forearm over the escape handle so Anders can't see it. We stay. We make ground. The mutiny heat in the cockpit can't be ventilated. He owns it now. They fall into the low heat layer where the sky is glass you can look through but not touch. Fuel, men, and bakelight stew into a clog. Dawes pulls her tin helmet forward on a knuckle, folly reflex, and leans on the carrier again. A 10-count turn 5, imagining a man tracing a chinagraph line, speaking bearing to someone he'll never meet. A broken antenna makes this risky. Not trying makes it final. MacCready shoulders into the wing root where the bleed glitters like opal. He wraps a hose with cloth and wire, a tourniquet only a machine lover believes in. Heat throbs through his sleeves. Fuel mist, hunting spark. His work becomes the wick if he lingers. He backs out like leaving a sleeping child, touches nothing else, braces against the bulkhead where the engine note washes through bones. The starboard hum evens for 2 breaths, then staggers. The nose dips half a degree, the altimeter's numbers drum a beat. Anders draws down, knuckles bumping the pencil into a wobble that looks like pulse. He marks 22 miles east-southeast, scraped ground, drums at threshold around a strip that is compacted hardpan in most of its length. Land the right way, and it will accept you. Land the wrong way, and it will finish what Cannon began. He adjusts for drift under a sky that lies and prays. The lie stays consistent. Merrick cracks the intercom, gets a squeal too much, like a match. He keeps voice low, harnesses tight, stow loose kit, knives in a belly arrival. Props full fine for the last 10 seconds. Standby magnetos on his word. Gear lever locked up. Belly doors taped in a dawn routine they mocked. Superstition now procedure. The desert respects both, answers to neither. They cross a seam where shimmer hides itself. The horizon goes out like a lamp. The world flattens. No depth, no scale, tricked into asking men to guess. The shadow fattening under them should be truth. Out here, shadows lie. Dust devils carry stones. Merrick keeps the nose slightly down. The live engine is a gentleman. Do not beg. Starve it, and it quits out of principle. In the blister, sweat makes the plexi a soft mirror. Anders sees his face cut by frames, forces eyes back out. Landmarks that don't move. The rib of an ancient river. The carcasses of trucks bleached to bone. Tracks men still follow because even ghosts leave directions. If he can fix pencil to bones, belief becomes instrument. The machine shivers through Merrick's thighs. Fear finds a voice that wants to decide for him. Anders says it again. Bail out. Softer, as if the gentler tone can slip past orders. Merrick doesn't look. Looking is considering. Consideration belongs to air that is plenty. He keeps eyes on the imagined line to oil drums he cannot see yet, rationing blink and belief. Dawes's pencil slips. The carrier holds, a thin needle in heat. She taps rhythm without spark. She tells the empty air who they are, where they think they are, that they will take ground if offered, and sky if not. The set winds back its own patience. Somewhere a stranger draws smoke across a runway. Jinx puts intent into the crossfeed without moving it. He'll nurse the starboard with whatever foul cocktail the tanks can cough. Delaying the second choice becomes physics. He's seen men die a second too soon, and engines die for a pound too much. He waits for Merrick's voice under the engine note with the word that makes it his moment. When it comes, he will live with it forever. They slide down the sky like a fish under a skin of water. In the nose, Anders lays his pencil along the line. He draws so that if anyone asks later why here, he can lay the pencil on reason. Merrick rides the panel light from hard to soft, knows a strip scraped from earth, drums at its ends, smoke when wind allows. Today the wind will lie. Today the line is a thing drawn inside heads, hoping ground drew it too. He says the thing that turns panic into plan. Harness tight, gear stays up, we're making ground. He takes his hand off the escape handle like a charmer leaving a snake awake and goes back to the yoke, the one thing that answers with physics. If the strip is where the map says one glide will do, if not, there'll be a torn belly and scattered names on a sheet of hardpan that remembers nothing. The bomber eases into a long, groaning hush as the dead port prop windmills bright and useless, a scythe-chewing air. Fumes become presence, stinging eyes, metal taste in the throat. Heat bakes the perspex until the glass looks soft. The altimeter unwinds lazy as spit in a stream. One glide, no go around, and every movement invites a spark. Anders drags the mapboard close. The bottom right corner is torn, the place his pre-briefed line would have crossed grid. He bites his cheek and pencils a new course through memory and remaining squares, triangulating off the last thing he trusted before Cannon. The desert has eaten edges. The horizon blurs into rumor. He writes a number, drifts it by a rule he could do in his sleep. In this heat, it feels like brag. Out the blister, the sand holds no pattern, pale plates and, here and there, a waddy like a laughing mouth. Anders taps twice, then thumps the compass. The card holds but knows nothing about the southeast wind shouldering them. He calls a heading, voice quick and dry. If belief were an instrument, he'd be on the beam. Merrick leans into that pencil-true course like opening a wired door. The wounded aileron makes the port wing sag. He needs more rudder than legs want to give. Pedals hot under boots, calves tremble, holding out the machine's new sins. Harnesses tight, he says again. It isn't fear, it's the ritual that builds a net. The escape handle hangs between them like a tongue he refuses to speak. Jinx, hair salted by sweat, buries both hands under the engineer's panel. The crossfeed sits stubborn in its gait. He persuades light, heavier, than hard enough to tear skin. Hot fuel breathes in lines, a petrol pump summer multiplied to fog. He gambles the running engine on taking from a tank, sprayed and maybe slit. It's stepping from one receding stone to the next in a river intent on your name. The starboard coughs, a dry bark, then sawtooths, the airframe trembles, then steadies like a man who thought he'd faint. Jinx keeps one thumb on the lever, one on mixture, a third he imagines on luck, keeping vapor bubbles from knitting a lock that chokes both. Vibration throbs up through deck plates into his feet. Just to the hard ground, he whispers, and the engine owes him nothing. In the radio bay, Dawes sits half-cocked in her headset, broken long wire draped across her knees like a dead snake. She knots the field wire to it. Sailors joke, good enough for war. The transmitter's face is a painted smile, missing teeth. She wedges a pencil under the key so she can hold the jury-rigged aerial with both hands. She taps out call sign on the heel of her hand against the set. Sometimes doors open when you knock. Hiss. Nothing. Then a ghost. Sideband words through a scarf. Inch by inch, she swings the rig like a torch for a reflection and holds the carrier. If HFDF lives, some man can turn her dirty signal into a bearing. The sun presses down. The desert empties. Anders hunts for oil drums, the discipline of men imposing order. The smoke can's upwind drum should flag wind. He sees only heat's tricks, not trees, not water. He angles the mapboard against glare, stares at the line he drew because Will wants to be fate. 5 minutes, he calls, lying to time. Merrick feels the aircraft like a horse at a fence. Heavy hands drag sparks out of metal. Atomized fuel in the root waits like a nervous ghost. Static rides friction and surprise. A hurried bailout would bring both. The fuel needle trembles if watched. He learns to ignore it. He keeps roll authority with what's left, plans the slip in his head. Lead with rudder, let aileron play small notes, never yank. Dawes hears a pattern in the static. She dials down, squints, then back up until a thread turns into speech. Wind 110 at 14, runway 120, smoke can upwind. It's a tired voice by drums in glare. It is enough. For a breath the world becomes small, human. She feeds it forward, the wind, the heading, the smoke. Merrick turns, numbers Anders penciled, now married to a voice. One attempt. A mistuned knot and heat could throw the bearing a quarter a point. There won't be a second call. The pencil wedge and the coil only hold so long. Jinx sets starboard prop to full fine. They may need a lick at the end, or none at all. Wrong pitch would be like singing off-key with a mouthful of glass. He hovers over magnetos, itching, thinking ahead to the call for contact off, mixture idle cut. The emergency litany they drilled and hoped never to use with flame and wind. Gear stays up. Hardpan punishes wheels. Anders scans for human agreement. 2 truck husks appear, dead beetles bleached to bone, and the tire tracks leaving them carve the sand at an angle that matches his pencil. Husks, he says, then, tracks 115. Not a guarantee, more than mirage. They float over a school of dust devils. The shadow underneath fattens, trying to catch them, an unreliable instrument in haze. "Runway 120, Dawes repeats. Smoke upwind. A second's crackle. Traffic clear. Then ragged silence. If the pattern's empty, they won't share this strip. If not, someone on the ground is trying to part water. She resists saying she sees no smoke. The wire hums in her teeth. Jinx nudges the transfer valve past half open. Too far, and he'll gulp air and stall both. Heroic error you answer for in a quiet room. He leaves it in the balancing place because risk cuts both ways. The engine hums grudgingly. He watches it like it might lie. "Correction 2 to starboard," Anders says, hand on Merrick's shoulder. A pact, not permission. The bomb sight bay glass winks through torn metal. He'll need that view, not to bomb, but because it shows ground without windshield tricks. He tells himself he can judge height by texture, the sand's grain turning to blur, an art the desert laughs at, but sometimes allows. The horizon folds away. Sky meets ground in negotiation. Merrick leans right rudder to lean into wind, keeps wings as level as a crooked wing allows, nudges the nose back when aileron bites wrong. The checklist paces him. Magnetos later, props full fine, harness tight, gear up. Time isn't yet. Don't crowd fate with ritual. "Smoke?" he asks. Dawes scrapes horizon with her eyes. The signal lies flat. Wind has pressed it into the ground where it reads gray on gray. A runway of compacted hardpan is just a rumor until you're on it. They pass the hulks, paint long gone, bones in the sun, and the track's vector toward a flatness that could be nothing or a place taught by wheels. Anders presses harder, turning tremor into groove. Jinx opens the small flap by his knee to bleed heat. The breeze is a lie, but he takes what he can. Everything rattles at one frequency, a tune he knows too well. Merrick sets for an approach he doesn't have yet. Nose down to keep the glide honest. Raising it bleeds speed they can't spare. The ground accelerates. Place a house on a plate you can't see until it's in your face. Silk under these winds would flay them and scatter them. He presses that thought flat into the choice he's already made. Then, straightness. A suggestion under shimmer. Anders leans forward to meet it. The smoke line lies tired and low, not where the brief said, "Wind has leaned it leeward." A pencil smudge more than a signal, easy to miss when missing makes the strip a mirage again. "Left 2, Anders," first a whisper, then firm. 118. He's asking Merrick to trust how straight looks when heat bends it. Merrick gives him 2. The bomber turns like an exhausted horse that still loves the rain. Dawes lifts the headset, puts it back. Silence. She taps the plate to remember talking matters. If they land where men are, help will come from drum edge. Missin' you might as well nail names to the wind. Her hand strays to the ripcord, and she sets it elsewhere. Jinx watches grit skate in a thin breeze, sneaking through the nose, dust painting everything. The empty port wing whispers, small pieces peeling away. Red flecks from the escape handle have speckled the floor. Oil drums now, disagreeing with the desert. A row of black stubs, a gap, another row. A strip exists, thin as promise. Merrick lines the nose, crosswind a hand on his jaw. He is high. Usual cure is a side slip. With a torn aileron, it's trusting damaged parts past injury. Overshoot and they'll run off into a place where patrols count tire prints. Slip and a wingtip scrapes first. The smoke leans. The drums do not. Merrick chooses the wrong-feeling thing with the right math. He slips her, leading with rudder, feeding just enough aileron to keep the bite without letting the wound become a tear. Sand rattles the fuselage in sheets, wind finds a new key, and the bomber falls in a complicated way that still answers to his hands. They have the heading, a strip, a wind's opinion. The horizon gives up, smoke smears to light. Instruments become opinion. The ground decides. They level to compass and a drift needle that lies by omission. The world is a bleached sheet. The altimeter drops in a steady sulk that seems too fast. The port wing weeps vapor along the spar, and every switch feels like a match. Anders peers through the blister with a torn chart clamped under his knee, trying to lay a pencil on a desert that refuses a straight edge, because with no horizon, the brain wants to roll itself into death. The wireless gives a cough of carrier, then bites Dawes' knuckle with a static snap. Her glove scorches, and the panel lamp fades. She wedges the pencil again, breath slow to keep sweat off live metal. Atomized fuel loves a spark, and their air is rich with it. She holds a count and sends a QDM in code, prayers without words, and gets only her heartbeat, then a smear of clear. Jinx slides fingers into the alley under the quadrant, finds the sticky detent, and forces the crossfeed like breaking a rib for breathing. The starboard cough resolves. Not good, not bad, just not worse. He doesn't say he's put everything on a bet with hot petrol through a damaged tank. He rides it quiet. Merrick sits so straight, the harness feels like wire. Right hand light on live throttle, left foot heavy, correcting the port's bite. The torn aileron flaps a jagged edge, building yaw that wants to grow into a roll. Props full fine, he says to himself. Magnetos, hands off until ground asks. Ritual is a rosary he doesn't speak aloud. A heat devil crosses like a vertical snake, scribbling their shadow into scrawl. Anders says a mile and then swallows it. Slant visibility collapses at noon. He rips the pencil stub with his teeth and draws a line to an idea of runway. The first oil drum appears as the idea of an object. Anders says, there, then corrects, maybe, just as Dawes points to run of parallel scratches, tire history. Merrick nudges the nose, the bomber heaves its shoulders and obeys. The bleached ribs of a truck hulk wink, a bad day left for others. Today it becomes a star. Crosswind shoves sideways, 14, gusting. The torn aileron chatters a silky threat. Do not trust me. The rule says don't land crosswind with a wound unless you must, and the other rule says always into wind. Today there is a strip and there is a wind. He slides the tail into the gust for honesty, promises a slip when the drums lie like beads in a line. Runway 120, Dawes repeats. The smoke should signal upwind, but wind is a free agent and drifts it. She keeps the carrier alive for long seconds. Nothing in return. The book says, kill unnecessary electrics when fumes are forward. The book hasn't met this heat or this silence. The aircraft skates in the slip and wants to snap to straight with an angry kick. Merrick gives it a breath and takes it back with the other foot. The air tastes like hot metal and chemical sweet. Drums run diagonally past the screen, hardpan soft as velvet until you remember velvet skins you at speed. The truck husk throws real shade. Human height now. This is it, Anders says, not reassurance, but admission. He folds the chart blind, wedges it by his heel where it can catch fire later without mattering. Late, violent lineup. Merrick blips propped to full fine, so when he kills mags, later the blades have drag. He thinks of dropping gear for drag and banishes it, the oldest trap. Gear digs, flips kills. Brace, he says in his throat, because words can spark and sparks have enough friends. A dust devil strafes the axis and redraws the strip in an instant. Wind has bullied the smoke, makes the runway read oblique to its markers. Gusts near 20. The desert says everything shifts while you plan. Dawes lashes the broken long wire to a roof screw, making the frame its aerial. Genius or a whispering bomb? She wedges the key and holds carrier to give DF a chance. 10 seconds, 30 if she dares. Static rides over everything. Somewhere, someone hears truth inside noise. She takes the risk and gives them time. The live engine coughs. Dry bark. MacCready feels it in his molars. This is hot fuel arguing with the pipe, one gulp of vapor from silence. He cracks the primer, feeds a whiff, hears the note round but breathless, a promise he can't enforce. He chooses richer mix, higher burn, lower chance of quitting. Glide alone won't beat this crosswind. Anders' pencil tumbles. He lets it. Words now give direction, not comfort. Cross is 16, gusting. Dirt hump right, don't drop the tip. He keeps his hand off the escape lever by pinning it to the useless map case. Merrick eases out of slip to a line, proper trim a dare, still hot, still high. Runway in front, not theory. Their shadow doubles, splits as a dust devil cuts it. He softens his hands, an apology to the wing for everything, and feels the left go light. The aileron tests his nerve. Dawes finally sees men, thumb-sized, shirts open, hands chopping down. You're hot, you're high. One arm sweeps, get left, get lower. No intercom. Her only reply is concentration. She clamps her jaw and rides the noise. The world narrows. Strip, drum, a patch of hardpan just beyond where smoke should be. The flare must be stolen, not late, not honest, but a lie that nets a kiss instead of a slap. Heat makes ground climb, vanishes it. Fumes sting, eyes water. Blink once, never again. Merrick holds off and lies a breath early. The live engine stumbles, part mixture, part weird intake airflow, in flare. Jinx hears the prop change voice, windmill to flag, and sets his hand over the magnetos, remembers not to touch. The lever is hot enough to cook. He keeps it anyway. If quiet comes, it must be invited. In the blister, Anders watches a dust devil skate directly across their aim point, tossing pebbles and candy wrappers of torn matting. Left 1 foot, he says, late and soft, because physics has taken the pen away. He braces his forearm into a frame, becomes a weight to be thrown. Dawes shuts her eyes once, opens them because operators don't blink at endings. The phones give a click, could be DF, could be a mouse, could be her heart. She lets the set go. The ground speaks next. Boots planted, chin tucked. The wind chooses its moment. A gust leans into the right wing when the torn aileron is ready to betray. Merrick slams left rudder, feeds a lick of power his mind can't justify, except that hands know. Props flare, slipstream blesses the tail. He buys a half second, the desert kept in its pocket. The live engine coughs again, like a drunk recalling a promise. They're lined up, too high, too fast. The live engine coughs once, ominously. Merrick boots rudder, drops the low wing until the horizon slides like a card. Nose stays on the drum. The fuselage presents to the wind, all drag, all prayer. The damaged aileron chatters and nibbles. Adverse yaw tugs, he feeds foot and trim, sideslips a machine not built for this attitude. Dust devils flicker under the starboard nacelle. The altimeter unwinds toward unforgiving ground. Anders reads the drums, 3 barrels, a smoke curl scoured by crosswind, runway skewed to their approach. 16 gusting, he says. Numbers act like sandbags. His pencil bounces away. He imagines himself a dot blown north in silk, dragged until bone objects. He breathes, opens his eyes to smoke. That's real. Dawes holds the key with the pencil wedge and hum of jury-rigged aerial. The set's hot smell equals living. Mayday, she says, then code for QDM. Hold the tone for their fix. Hope the coil doesn't arc into fumes. Clear, bleeds through, stretched, warped, enough to assume no lorry will wander on. It pins their one chance in place. MacCready's thumb goes numb on the lever, a skillet-hot oval. He listens to vibration through deck like stethoscope without bell, draws the starboard throttle back a hair in the slip so the prop turns without biting hard. Hot fuel hisses in the port bay where the ruptured line fogs everything. Starving feed risks vapor lock. One gulp of air is a cough before silence. He accepts a richer burn to keep flame to the thresh. Glide won't fix crosswind. At 300 feet, the desert becomes smear. Texture lost, height turned to guess. Merrick deepens the slip. The smoke drum moves from screen to side window to somewhere under the wing. Props full fine. Mags wait. Gear up. Harness. He grinds between teeth so the hands remember when the ground surges. Landmark, Anders says, paying his debt when truck and tracks overlay his drawn angle. You were right to hold. Merrick doesn't answer. Air has weight, and attention is a ration. The forward belly is already close enough to feel the ground's heat in his palms. Wind, 110, 14. HFDF whispers and dies. Dawes taps back and stops, recalling the brief. Hot coil is a match in fumes. She flicks to receive only, then wraps the mic cord around the key so it will not whip in their faces when they hit. The wedge drops and rattles, a small sound inside a larger fate. The runway isn't planking so much as habit, the planking only glinting at the threshold like a grace note. Merrick knows this in two ways: paper and nights over water. The safest choice in orders dies under wind and distance. Parachutes would have laid them on a compass rose to be harvested. Crosswinds drag for hundreds of meters here. Medics live beyond an invisible line you cannot cross with broken legs. He keeps the slip and doesn't look back. Heat clogs. The temp needle creeps. Oxygen was off hours ago. Decision fatigue rings his eyes like pressure. He narrows to drum, smoke, shadow, ritual. One more input, one more correction, one more foot turning into theirs. At 150, the engine coughs again. Gooseflesh prickles. McCready inches the lever. Cheap metal flexes. The tone evens by a hair. Just enough to shape a flare, not enough to do more. He nods to Merrick, conspirators in the last dance of parts. Dawes reads torn sand where gusts bit and dragged, imagines white silk catching, knees going under, bones saying enough. Reflex wants to tug a ripcord. She pins her hand under the seat edge. Hold, she tells her own body, and means it. Adverse yaw tugs again. The torn aileron tries to shame him. He lets the rudder work, eases out of slip by seconds. Align fuselage to strip while nose still bleeds speed. Pick not a moment, but a smear to straighten, so belly doesn't catch, and wing doesn't cartwheel. Crossfeed has heated fuel hot enough that line hiccups. A stumble touches 50 feet and threatens a cut. McCready heels his fist into the panel like a caustic prayer and rolls richer, not book, but finger memory from an Italian hangar. The engine obliges with a stutter and a sulky hum. Hold, he thinks, like a stable boy to someone else's horse. The belly doors are taped. Impact will peel a fuselage like fruit if they aren't. Anders sees how the strip edges into hardpan and how smoke talks to wind. Left 2, he calls, a shared world in a private second. The nose answers slow. Control now is conversation, not push. Detail replaces horizon, pebbles, the planking shine, dust devils kneeling to their shadow. 3, 2, 1, Merrick whispers to himself, unspools rudder, bleeds pitch. He feels the gear lever up like a sin uncommitted. He keeps it that way. Crosswind wants upwind wing light. A gust would peel them. He tastes fuel and metal and remembers red paint on glove leather. Magnetos? He leaves them on an extra heartbeat, blaspheming the list, forcing props to be driven a little longer before wind takes them. A choice the book wouldn't like, and the desert doesn't care about. Dawes looks away from the set and sees initials carved into frame, boys' marks that look old now. Contact, not a slam, but a kiss. Then a second voice as belly meets salt and sand. The machine shudders as if bitten. Sand wraps them in a dirty curtain. The universe reduces to noise and grit. A rib in the right wing thinks about becoming a spear and fails. The starboard prop bows circle to ellipse to still, blades bending back to oar. The left tip finds a dune ridge and shaves, tugging them left. Merrick fights yaw with hands and foot, because control lasts until it doesn't. The torn aileron flutters a last time and freezes with a crack. New drag tries to pivot them. The decision he made at 9,000 pats his shoulder and moves on. They slide. Hardpan, then a sand drift, then hardpan again. Wind louder, cabin full of dust that tastes like old paper. Drums ghost past, smoke scours away. A lorry that could have been there isn't. Somebody heard clear and obeyed. Motion dies in a long groan. Tail swings the last few degrees like a dog circling for sleep. Silence doesn't arrive. Wind, ticking metal, Dawes' breath, Anders' bark of laughter, Macready's restraint give the moment a choir. Merrick keeps hands on controls a fraction longer than necessary. Habit doesn't let go gently. Then he cuts magnetos, and the smell shifts. Fuel fog stays, but without hot breath, it's more ghost than arsonist. He looks up into sky too bright, then down, finds his crew by their noises before faces in dust. Anders peels the map off his thigh, grit tacked there, barks one short laugh that is gratitude without joy. Truck carcass, he reports, as if it were a target. He coughs dust where fear had been renting space. His hand touches the ripcord and leaves it, as if embarrassed by the thought that might have made him a flag. Dawes unpeels from the seat. The set hums an aftersound, as if reminding them it gave one word that mattered. She loosens lashings, coils the lead like a snake that stayed quiet. She looks at Merrick like a door they didn't walk through. He gives a nod. No ceremony. Get out. Count. Find shade. And water. Macready is already on his knees in the passage, hands on bulkheads, feeling for the wrong warmth, nose searching for the note that says fire. The port bay panel is hot. Atomized fuel baths, stiff cloth, and rough metal. One stray arc would flip the story. No switches, he calls, content not volume, and the order carries because everyone is listening differently now. Merrick pops the harness, feels the heavy line of responsibility slack with webbing. He twists, knees complain, slaps the canopy latch that stuck for 2 summers and now opens like it was never a problem. Heat smashes in. The desert is noise and light and burned iron. Oil drums and moving men manifest in it. Clear to starboard, he gestures, circle up, move to the live side, because the port wing still bleeds volatile. They spill onto hardpan, not quite to knees. Training stops collapse at the last inch. Dawes' boots skid, and her body does a small dragged stumble that tells her nerves what silk under gusts would have done. She stands because she can and grins once, teeth white in a dirty face. Anders pats belly metal as if thanking an animal that didn't throw him. Ground crew arrive with a hand pump, a canvas, extinguishers that look like toys in this place. A man reaches for a blade. Merrick catches his wrist, iron polite. Don't. The ground man reads the stripes, the eyes, moves where Merrick points. Authority carries even in dust. They count themselves without counting, names, hands, eyes. Macready pauses on each touch the way a man checks for pulse. When he reaches Dawes, he nods, still here. Merrick points his chin at the bleached truck rib that saved Anders from only equations. Anders nods back, a lump not entirely dust. Smoke slides and paints the bomber's scarred skin. If they had jumped, they would be coins strewn across this flat, hurt and alone, then found by others who read tire tracks. Here they are together. Together matters when patrols trace prints like handwriting, and a medic with a cigarette is worth more than any prayer. The fuselage ticks and cools, small sounds that carry in open space. Sand leans against belly, begins to intrude. Dawes shades her eyes at the drumline where a man waves a paddle. Then she stares past, to distances riding lakes and cities in haze. The sun presses her skull like a palm. Her shadow pulls toward the drums, and she steps. Medics touch and count, teeth, eyes, limbs, numbers that mean stay or go. An officer emerges with a clipboard and a rehearsed normal. He smiles the wrong way, fixes it. "Good choice," he says, as if choices at a desk match choices at 9,000. Merrick nods. It costs nothing. The calculus of wind, fuel, flare, and bodies isn't for a form. They walk with their shadows toward oil drums, where shade and water begin. Behind them, the machine settles, starboard prop bent, belly scuffed, a creature that finished its last run. Night is hours away. Cool will arrive like forgiveness. Patrol kites will see white fuselage in moon and not flinch. Merrick glances back once to fix the picture, where metal kissed earth and stayed. This is why his glove left the handle. Silk looks clean on paper. Wind makes it a lie. A belly landing keeps trouble in one piece where canvas and tea wait. He doesn't preach. They heard the sermon together in heat and noise. Breathing after flight is a ritual. Gravity teaches bodies again how to be held. Eyes slow. Horizons become places, not insults. Oil drums are a chapel. Smoke is incense blown to the wrong corner by a draft. Men tramp and leave tracks. Anders reads them and thinks of how the enemy reads too. Merrick lets the harness hang like a sash. Sweat cools as a breeze finally finds them. He inventories, Anders ankle stiff, Dawes flexing a wrist, then leaving it alone, McCready rubbing thumb to palm to restart sensation. He tucks the list away. It will keep the story honest later when beer and light make everything easier than it was. Behind them, the aircraft lies still as sand begins to drift against its scarred belly. A groundman at the drums chops a paddle toward the far end of the strip, and Merrick turns his crew toward shade and orders, then the salvage of what can be carried. The metal ticks, the wind talks, and the next decision is to move.